Every year the V8 Supercars come to Albert Park for a non-championship race, but the level of competition is often that of a full-blown championship round. Good afternoon everyone, beautiful day at Albert Park, and looking forward to the first of 4 races in the MSS Security V8 Supercar non-championship round here at Albert Park. Jack Perkins was on the grid 12 months ago, but you've moved to an enduro drive this year. The Holden Racing team's going okay, but at the moment, Jack, they're chasing the Pepsi Max Crew Fords.
They are, Kralsey, and look, it's great to be back here with Network 10. V8s are back on 10, and fantastic to be here at Albert Park. And yeah, no points this weekend, but I tell you, no race car driver wants to finish second, and it's going to be a great first race here. We saw an interesting qualifying session yesterday, like you touched on. Mark Winterbottom and Chaz Mostert on the front row. The first time we've seen a Ford on pole position since 2013.
November 2013. It's been a long time. James Courtney, the Clipsal 500 winner, from third alongside David Reynolds. So 3 of the Pro Drive Racing Australia Fords in the top 4. Shane Van Gisbergen second at Clipsal, and Scott Mclaughlin on the next row. There's some heavy hitters further down. Garth Tander springs to mind that should make their way forward. Yeah, correct. We saw Todd Kelly first, the Nissans in 10th, Rick Kelly in 11th there, Lee Holdsworth back in 15th, Nick Percat driving for Lucas Dumbrell Motorsport there in 18th, and Marcus Ambrose back from NASCAR in P20. Yeah, on pole in his debut in a V8 Supercar here way back in the early 2000s, and back to Darwood, Tim Blanchard, Andre Heimgartner, the rookie Chris Pither filling in for David Wall in the second Volvo, and Michael Caruso, who has 1 lap to his credit from 2 practice sessions in qualifying with a range of electrical dramas in the Nissan. Yeah, brand new car this weekend for Michael Caruso. He damaged his car 2 weeks ago at the Clipsal 500, and they couldn't fix that one, so they gave him a new car, and they've had nothing but trouble with that thing, unfortunately. And Michael was on pole here last year, so he was really looking forward to getting out there. The Nissan Altima this year's had a revised aero package, so he was keen to get back out there and see if he could get another pole, but no laps to his name so far, and starting this first race in last place, so we'll be looking for him to charge through the field. Our friends across the Tasman will be looking back to Shane Van Gisbergen, because this has been something of a Kiwi fest for the last couple of years. In fact, 9 races in a row have been won by New Zealanders. Shane Van Gisbergen has 4 to his credit, Fabian Coulthard 3, and Scott Mclaughlin a couple, including that fantastic race win, the first for Volvo last year. Yeah, and interesting to note, Shane Van Gisbergen driving a 888 customer car, first of the 888 cars this weekend. Jamie Whincup qualified back in 9th place, which is below par for those guys, and Craig Lowndes a couple spots further back. Now, if you're unfamiliar to V8 Supercar racing here, it's a rolling start, just for something a little bit different, and Jason Barguana, the series driver standards observer, made the point in the driver's briefing yesterday, Jack. They need to form up side by side, basically within their grid boxes on either side of the Formula 1 start grid. Yeah, correct. Last year we could see the poleman dictate his place on the road, and this year they've said you've got half the track each, boys, sort it out, and this will be an interesting run into turn 1. As you said, we always have standing starts, but this weekend a point of difference, a rolling start, and it's going to be interesting to see who gets the jump out of the 2 Pepsi boys. The teammates are on the front row. It might not be playing for championship points, but gee, there's always a lot on the line at Albert Park. They're very close, and the pole sitter a long way to the centre line. There's the green flag. They'll get to the acceleration zone now and unleash the V8 Supercars at Albert Park. Great start from Mark Winterbottom, and the Albert Park spread behind them as they go 4 and 5 wide into turn 1. Watch for Van Gisbergen down the inside. Tries to squeeze James Courtney wide, can't do it. Courtney's in front of David Reynolds, and the Holden Racing Team car goes to 3rd, Van Gisbergen to 5th. It looked like Shane got a really good run into turn 1, and he nearly got squeezed wide, but he's done well to get through. Look at this, nearly 4 wide. Scott Mclaughlin pushed wide there. Looks like Todd Kelly got into the rear of the Volvo. And I think Garth Tander got into the back of Todd Kelly, and that caught Mclaughlin off the road. So the leading Volvo will be right at the back of the 25-car field. And you see there, Chris Pither filling in this weekend. He's 1 spot ahead of Scotty there. David Wall's got a burnt foot from Adelaide, so Chris Pither's in the 34 Volvo this weekend. G'day to Dave and his family back up in Sydney. They'll be watching on. Busy in the background. Is that one of the Nissans? That looks like Blanchard in the Cool Drive Lucas Dumbrell car, and Ambrose looked to be caught up in that as well. That was cars in the fence, I expect. It was Marcus Ambrose in the Worth number 17. Yeah, big damage on the run up in the shady part of the circuit, up into that right-hand corner. It is an overtaking opportunity up there. A lot of single 2x2 running on the opening lap, Jack, and they're on cold tyres. But the other thing we should point out this weekend, they're on the hard Dunlop control tower. Last year on the softs, so getting these tyres up to temperature will be a more difficult ask this year. Yeah, V8 Supercars use 2 compounds of tyres, and in recent years at the Grand Prix they've used the soft tyre, and this year it's the hard tyre, and there's only 3 sets, so 3 sets of tyres across 4 races. That'll be
interesting to watch how that pans out over the weekend as we see Craig Lowndes putting the move on our own Rick Kelly there and doesn't quite get the job done.
So Winterbottom clearing out, and there's more damage. That's the number 4 Erebus Motorsport V8 entry of Ash Walsh, the V8 Supercar rookie this year. A lot of damage to the front corner of the 4 car. His teammate Will Davison sitting down a little bit further, just behind Lee Holdsworth and Nick Percat at the moment. Hasn't been a great start to the season for Erebus, so they did show some pace in practice earlier this weekend. 1 lap down, it's Winterbottom, Mostert, Courtney is 1.8 from the lead, then Reynolds, Van Gisbergen, Fabian Coulthard 6th, Whincup up to 7th, so gain for the champion, then Tim Slade, Rick Kelly inside the top 10, and Craig Lowndes rounding it out.
Great start there for the 2 Pepsi boys. That's never nice starting a race next to your teammate, especially on the front row. Everyone's watching. They've got through cleanly, and it looks like they've got good speed on this opening lap.
And we may be going to safety car. Yes, we are. So for the damage, a couple of cars strewn around the circuit. We'll just see how much debris there is on the road, because this is where the accident happened on the opening lap. This run up here to the right-hander, we saw that damage for Tim Blanchard, and he and Ash Walsh have not come across the start line.
I'd suggest Ash tried to drive it back and may have got some radio information to suggest there was damage to the car, to the engine, and he's pulled it up, and as a result there's a safety car.
Well, Ash Walsh started this one 19th, Blanchard 22nd. It's not without the realms of possibility that those 2 cars got into each other on the opening lap.
And we saw Ambrose involved in that as well, so I dare say the 3 of them were caught up fighting for the same bit of road.
Yeah, disappointing qualifying session for Marcus Ambrose, the DJR Team Penske crew. Only 20th. I think after that amazing top 10 shootout appearance in Adelaide 2 weeks ago, everyone sort of just expected he'd be back where he left off, but this is still going to be a big progress, a big learning curve for the Tasmanian to become reacquainted with V8 supercar racing, and that is undoubtedly the reason we're under safety car for the first time this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, it's as we look at a replay here at the start, we see Van Gisbergen on our left of screen. He had a good run up the inside of James Courtney, and then we've got David Reynolds and Scotty Mclaughlin trying to go 4 wide into turn 1, and really the field did well to get through here. It was turn 3 where there was a bit of aggravation.
Here's another look. Gee, Van Gisbergen just avoided getting into the rear corner of James Courtney. Now, turn 3, as you said, got a little bit dicey because there was a Nissan in the background there. Might have been Todd Kelly.
Yeah, it was Todd. Todd's got into the back of Scotty, and I think Scotty came across, maybe didn't see him, and again, you know, 2 guys fighting for the same bit of road.
But I think Garth Tanner was involved in that as well, Jack, and this is behind. So Andre Heimgartner was the car immediately behind Ash Walsh, so he was involved. I think Tim Blanchard and Marcus Ambrose were just the meat in the concertina there.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's not nice when you come out of there. It's a fast corner on the exit, and when you're committed and a car's sideways in front of you, you've got nowhere to go. And Tim Blanchard out of the car, good to see he's okay, but a lot of damage to that Lucas Dumbrell car.
Second race a bit later on this afternoon, so they will have time, we hope, to get that car back out. Great to see Tim back in the seat. Local driver, the Blanchard family, so very well known here in Victoria especially. And that's been a drama. While we're under safety car, we'll take a break and come back with green flag racing here at Albert Park. We're back at Albert Park, the V8 Supercar MSS Security Challenge here on fantastic Friday, the Formula 1 Rolex Australian Grand Prix. We're under safety car. Ash Walsh's car has been recovered. Tim Blanchard was involved in that. He's down in pit lane chatting to Mark Larkham.
Yeah, just quickly his car first, guys. You can see they're just whipping the bonnet off now. Now, normally on that and flatten it out wouldn't be much of a drama, but you can look in here. There's the airbox, the carbon fibre airbox. That's distorted and bent, which will suck dirt into the engine, which that's no good. But worst of all, if you look under here, you can see water under there. So we've cracked a cooler by the look of this. I'll just try and grab Timmy. Hey, Tim, I might just drag you out the front if I could. Mate, Grand Prix V8 races never let us down. There's always carnage in the early laps. You probably got a pretty good read of it from where you were positioned.
Oh, don't know what's happened there, but they've just all crashing into each other first lap of a non-championship round. It just seems pretty silly to me, but now we've got a damaged car. It's not too bad. I think it looks a lot worse than it really is. It's managed to wipe off a lot of speed before it actually hit him, but yeah, first lap of a non-championship round to be crashing into each other like that's pretty ordinary.
All right, mate. Well, there is an upside. This is very much a tyre management couple of days, so you're well off the tyres. Good luck.
Thanks, mate. Thanks.
Through every cloud, there's a silver lining in Mark Larkham's world there. Just making sure Tim Blanchard didn't feel too bad. It's a shame. He's a driver with a lot of talent, and one of those great young talents that came through the ranks of Formula Ford and the V8 Supercar Development Series, and raced full-time in 2013 Enduros last year, and was really keen to show what he had to offer this season in a full-time drive with LD Motorsport.
Yeah, I grew up racing with Tim in go-karts even when we were about 10 years old, and it's good to see him back on the grid, and I can understand his pain there. I mean, you're racing for 20th position, first lap. Come on, guys, we don't need to be doing crashing and bashing, but it's what happens back there, and that's why it gives you a lot of motivation to try and qualify up the front.
Like I mentioned, tyres, we should talk about that. Only 3 sets of the Dunlop hard tyre allowed this weekend, and every team to a T yesterday after qualifying was saying we had no speed in practice because we're conserving tyres, and this is just another look at what happened up there under the bridge.
It's not a great angle, but you can see, I think what happened was Ambrose was hard against the fence, and either Heimgartner and Walsh have crowded him over, and I think Ambrose had nowhere to go, and unfortunately you can't move those concrete walls, so Tim has come off worse off, and so has Ash Walsh, but be interesting. We're going to go green at the end of this lap.
Talk to us about tyres. You raced here last year on the soft Dunlop tyre. Completely different world when you're on the hards, but I think the biggest talking point is they've only got 3 sets to use.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, this year, each year we have slightly different rules and regs, and they've decided to use more hard tyre events this year. So Bathurst and the Enduros are commonly hard tyres, but at selective rounds we use soft tyres, and this year there's a lot more hard tyre racing, and as you said, there's only 3 sets of hard tyres this weekend for 4 races. So what we'll see is everyone in this race using the same tyre set, because they all have to start with a set of tyres, and then there'll be one race throughout the weekend where someone has to double up. So people like Marcus Ambrose might start race 2 this afternoon with race 1 tyres, but others may choose to grab another set. So there'll be some mixed up results throughout the course of the weekend, but if it rains tomorrow, forget about it, because they put wets on.
So the safety car will pull away, and Mark Winterbottom will control the field back to the start-finish line. But Chaz Mostert, his speedy young teammate, what a season he had last year. Of course, that famous Bathurst victory, but he unloaded very, very quickly at the start of this season, was right on the pace at the Clipsal 500, out-qualified Frosty in 2 of the 3 races. Back to green, they're hard on it out of turn 16. Winterbottom leads. Courtney, though, gets a pretty good restart. The first of the Holdens right in behind Mostert.
Yeah, Courtney got a great restart as we see Nick Percat, Lee Holdsworth battling further down the field. But it is Mark Winterbottom, Chaz Mostert, and then James Courtney in third. David Reynolds, first weekend in the FGX Ford Falcon, and he's running strongly as well.
That's Nick Percat trying to hold out his old car from last year, the 4th car from Walkinshaw Racing. Van Gisbergen looks down the inside of Reynolds at turn 3. Racing room given though, Jack, and good, clean, hard racing between the 2.
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the only passing opportunities on the track, and Dave did enough to stay on the outside and then put Shane on the outside for the theirs. Switch back through here. Shane now got the run on the inside.
Well, he's always tenacious. We saw that in Adelaide in his battle with James Courtney, that epic that started the season, and just hip and shoulders Reynolds wide. He might have damage there. At the very least, he's off the road and he's going to drop a bunch of spots.
He is. Dave actually locked a left front tyre, so the track goes from right to left before you then make the right-hand turn there. And I reckon he caught the left front on the line, and it's locked the tyre, and he's gone through the gravel trap. So just as I was talking Dave up, he's now dropped way back down to 14th place.
Yeah, he was so keen to get his hands on the new FGX Falcon after a very, very tough weekend at the Clipsal 500. And unloaded quick, was fast in practice, was fast in qualifying, right on the second row. And that's where we expect and want to see the Bottle racing driver, because we know he's got the talent and the speed, but we haven't seen enough of it in the last 12 months. We need to see him at the front of the field.
Yeah, Dave is, when he's on, you know, and hasn't been enough days where he's on. But we look back, Todd Kelly and Jason Bright, and Craig Lowndes still working away at Rick Kelly. Like we said, the Red Bull cars weren't happy with where they qualified. I chatted with Roland this morning, and a below-par performance on their standards, and Shane Van Gisbergen, the fastest of the AAA cars.
A slide out there for Mark Winterbottom. What's the usual operating range for these hard tyres as we go back and have a look at this move? So watch the bright green car on the outside. It's almost as if he turned in a little bit early, Jack, and just whacked the rear corner of Van Gisbergen's car. Yeah,
I was wrong. He wasn't near the grass and just made contact with the back of Shane's car, and that's sent him through the gravel trap. But yeah, what happens with the hard tyres is there's not as much grip as the soft tyre, and especially when the track here at Albert Park is quite green, you get a lot of slipping and sliding. And with the hard tyre, you need to start with really low tyre pressures, and those tyres then take a few laps to generate the operating temperature required. We see Ambrose fighting with Chris Pither here in the second Volvo.
Chris Pither will be enjoying this, the young Kiwi. Full-timer in the development series and raced in the V8 Utes as well. Last minute call-up for this drive here, and a lot of chat around the paddock that he may well be in one of those cars for the season of endurance a little bit later on. Sandown, Bathurst and the Gold Coast. Meanwhile, leaders have closed up, the two Pepsi Max crew forwards, and James Courtney in the Holden Racing Team car celebrating their 25th anniversary. Didn't you sign on at the right time to drive for them in the Enduro race later this year?
Yeah, look, I mean, HRT's going from strength to strength. They've been through a couple of rebuilding phases, and to start the year like they have, I mean, James Courtney's winning the championship. He won the 250k race on the Sunday at Adelaide, and, you know, they've just got a lot of speed, and I think they're the next team to take it to Triple Eight. In recent years, it's been FPR, but I think HRT are there now. Here's
Scott Mclaughlin. He's climbed his way to 17th position. After that off on the opening lap, the safety car would have helped the driver of the 33 car.
Dale Wood just hung around the outside enough there, and Scotty had to lean on him to get through the turn there, and I think he got the job done.
He's such a committed racing car driver, isn't he, Scott? You're never left wondering what performance is left on the table with car 33.
These three cars up the front have got pretty good speed here. I'm really looking at James. He's as he just ran wide there, but he was really ranging in on the back of Chaz, who's, you know, right up on the back of Mark Winterbottom. This should be a great race from here to the end. And like I said, those FGXs have come on strong. I mean, Dave was running up there, but to see the two Pepsi cars up there, it's good for the sport. And good to see Shane now chipping away at it. So it's a classic Ford Holden battle up the front.
Shows how close and competitive it is this year, though, because you can go from being bottom half of the top 10 or somewhere there or thereabouts at Adelaide on one style of track. And the Pepsi Max cars unloaded here, they were rapid from the first session and locked out the front row. But it just shows how competitive it is. If you find half a 10th, you find yourself 3 or 4 rows on the grid.
Oh, I mean, it's the most competitive championship in the world, touring car championship in the world. A second separated the top 18 yesterday, and any small mistakes and any small gains you can make a massive difference. And that's a testament to the rules and to the parity that we share between all the brands, and it, you know, generally provides pretty good racing.
Good ground for Rick Kelly in this race, the Jack Daniels Racing number 15 car. JD's celebrating 10 years in the sport. They've been a loyal supporter of the Kellys in particular over the last couple of years through the difficult early phases of the Nissan program. Those cars have got some pace now. It hasn't gone quite their way in qualifying, and we all thought they'd be up the front based on what we saw from them here last year. And of course, with the modifications they've had to their aero package, and they've got new engine mods coming as well, sort of thought they'd be a little bit further up. It just didn't go together for them at the moment. Nevertheless, Rick Kelly involved in a battle with his old sparring partner Craig Lowndes. Halfway through the V8 Supercars opening race at Albert Park. We'll finish it off when we come back as Roland Dane watches on from the Red Bull pits. There's more V8s when we come back to Albert Park. Between two of the most experienced drivers in this year's V8 Supercar field, Craig Lowndes and Rick Kelly. Nissan v Holden, dicing for what is 8th and 9th position here in race 1. The MSS Security V8 Supercars. Richard Crowell, Jack Perkins with you. Didn't miss anything while we were away at commercial break, except for James Courtney banging in the fastest lap of the race, a 1:59.0. The gap to the leaders consistent at about 1.8 seconds. James Courtney, the lap time's significant though, Jack, for the reasons of how far it is off where they qualified yesterday.
Yeah, it is. I mean, they're 3 seconds slower than what they did in qualifying, and you know, it's a mixture of things. I mean, the first thing is you're in race trim, so you've got a lot more fuel on board from yesterday, and being a 16-turn circuit, you know, a tenth or 2 tenths off each corner, it adds up to a lot of time, and it's a really long, hard track on the tyres, and you know, once you've gone, like I said, from qualifying to race trim, it makes a big difference, and the tyres start to wear out through the course of the race. So we did see James Courtney put in the fastest lap, but it does look like Mark Winterbottom has the consistently fastest car. But just watching this battle between Craig and Rick, it's so hard where Craig is, because you're tucked up the back of the Nissan, you're losing a lot of the front aero, the front wing, if you like, on that Red Bull car, and it's hard to follow because also your brake temperatures heat up, you don't get a lot of clean air in the engine, and he's following closely there, and it's hard now to set up a passing manoeuvre because everything's running a lot hotter than normal and you're not producing the grip that you are on your own.
And unlike Adelaide, where we see a couple of really significant stops, the end of the back straight there into turn 9 is 235, 40k down to about 60. There isn't a massive stop like that here because a lot of the turns are quite quick for these cars.
Yeah, they are, and it's a long flow-in circuit that doesn't generate a lot of straight-line braking G-force because there's not a lot of grip out there. It's not a permanent racetrack, it's a temporary racetrack, and while I said it doesn't generate high brake temperatures, but it's long flowing corners, and that really wears the rear tyre out and knocks off the lap speed. But in saying that, we just see Mark Winterbottom do a 59 dead and go the fastest lap of the race, so he's got that number 5 Falcon dialed in, and he's certainly driving away from Chaz at this stage.
Yeah, the gap's 1.6 seconds as this great little battle continues. Craig Lowndes and Rick Kelly, dare we bring up that Phillip Island grand finale a while back. It's one of the Nissans just running wide on the exit of that commitment chicane at the back. We saw the Formula 1 cars in practice 1 there, and Marcus Ambrose locking a brake. That's one of the heaviest stops on the racetrack, but it's still a very quick right-hand turn. And Ambrose just struggling. For fans of David Reynolds, he's 19th, having run 4th earlier in the motor race. So that off a little bit earlier on in this race has really cost the Bottle Racing driver. He'll need to work his way back forward over the course of the weekend. Some movers and shakers, though. Shane Van Gisbergen's up 1 from where he started. Fabian Coulthard up 2 to 5th place. Been a good start for the Freightliner racing crew this year. They were very, very quick at the Clipsal 500, and they've continued that on this weekend.
They have. I mean, Brad Jones Racing is probably one of the true privateer teams out there in this sport, and to bring on a new sponsor like Freightliner and have a win the first day at Adelaide was a fantastic start to the year. And we use the term punching above the weight, you know, and that's what BJR do. They're a small team from Albury, and they seem to be able to provide competitive race cars for their drivers week in, week out, and it's great to see. And we look back now, we're seeing a bit of a gap now between the first three, certainly opening the gaps and settling now the races. Only 2 laps to run, and looking at James Courtney here, just doesn't quite have the speed to take it to the two boys in front.
It's a different format to what we're used to seeing in V8 Supercar racing in 2015. It sort of goes back in time a little bit to the old days of a round result where the points from all 4 races count. Last year, it was Scott Mclaughlin who scored the most points, so 75 points for a race victory. At the end of race 4, we'll have an overall winner. So if you're only 3rd or 4th or 5th in this race, that could change over the course of the weekend. And as long as you're in the mix going into that final race, you might still be in contention for the big trophy and a spot on that famous Albert Park podium on Sunday afternoon.
And that's where we'll see that tyre strategy play into effect. When do you reuse your tyres and how do you do it? So it'll be interesting to see what the 2 FPR boys do. They're racing each other, but they'll know what they're doing with tyres. So we look now between the battle of the 2 Kiwis, and we see, I think, you know, Shane's dropping off a little bit. Maybe his tyres have just knocked the edge off the grip level, and Fabian looks to have a racier car there, and he might be able to get close enough to put a move on Shane.
He finished 2nd in Adelaide, Shane Van Gisbergen. Coulthard had a great weekend there too, but I guess so much discussion in the last 2 weeks, Jack, about that move on James Courtney. I'm keen for your thoughts. I know you're firmly in the HRT camp that weekend as the co-driver for James in the Enduros, but as a racing driver, what did you think about the infamous redress?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's one of the only corners at Adelaide. For those that didn't see it, Shane made a manoeuvre on James for the lead of the race, and they made a bit of contact. Shane got past James, but in Shane's mind, he didn't feel as though the move was fair, and in this game you're allowed to readdress the situation to avoid further penalty, and Shane took it upon himself to let James back through, and the talk around the paddock is Shane didn't really need to do it, I'll be fair. And I mean, whilst it was great to see James win, that's who I'm going for. You know, if that was James passing Shane, he wouldn't have let him go. And certainly chatting to a lot of the drivers in the paddock this weekend, they're all of the same opinion. But it'll be interesting now to see how that presents itself moving forward. That's a precedent there, Shane said. And the drivers in this weekend's drivers briefing, I was expecting someone to seek some clarification on whether Shane was in the right or wrong, and no one asked that question. So we'll see what happens next time that situation is presented.
Call will be made by Tim Schenken and Jason Bargwanna up in race control. 1 to go at Albert Park, the first of 4 races in the V8 Supercars this weekend. We'll bring you all of the support race action. Porsche Carrera Cup Australia coming your way. 3 ultimate speed comparisons, which are always great fun. And tomorrow, the olden days of Australian touring car racing, the Heritage Touring Cars Group C and Group A. We'll bring you 2 races from them over the weekend. They're always great fun to watch, their Group C cars, and right up through to the Turbo Nissan Skylines. Just a shot of Rusty French watching from the Pro Drive Racing Australia, one of Australia's racing greats and a co-owner of that team. He'll be happy with the way they're going. Mark Winterbottom half a lap away from what will be his 4th Albert Park race victory.
Rusty's a great supporter of motorsport, and to be involved with FPR, I was with that team last year, and he actually had to drive on a test day, which was good to see. And, you know, like I said, great supporter of motorsport. Great to have him here as a part of the team and looking on interestingly.
I don't know if you'd put him in an endurance seat, but he's still racing competitively, is Rusty, in the Touring Car Masters series. He's got a brand new Ford Mustang he's building for that to go racing this year, built in the V8 Supercar workshop, of course. It's great to see a man with so much experience and enthusiasm for the sport continuing to invest, and especially in young drivers like Chaz Mostert, who's P2. But Winterbottom half a lap away. This will be a confidence boost after a pretty tough Clipsal 500.
Yeah, I mean, Mark was rapt to get pole position yesterday, and we didn't have a year that he would have liked by his own standards. I mean, he was leading the championship at the midpoint, but it fell away, and unfortunately didn't get the results that he wanted to. But Mark's a professional, you know, he's a good driver, and this is really good. And it's non-championship points, but moving forward, the next round at Tasmania, and really good confidence for those guys, and they'll be looking to, you know, really cement their spot in the championship.
For the first time in 3 years, we'll have an Aussie win a V8 Supercar race at the Australian Grand Prix. That 9-race streak is over. Mark Winterbottom will come across the line and win race 1 in the MSS V8 Supercar Challenge and beats his teammate home by just under 2 seconds, with James Courtney third, the Clipsal winner, the Holden Racing Team Commodore, and very close between Van Gisbergen and Coulthard, 4th and 5th overall, and split by 0.02 of a second as they cross the line.
As little Oliver Winterbottom there watching on, to be very proud of Dad's performance there, so good job. Good start to the weekend for Mark Winterbottom.
And so too for Chaz Mostert, who just kept fairly consistent pressure on the whole way through. I think they all realise that it's only race 1 of 4. There's plenty of water under the bridge so far this weekend. So here's how they ran, Jack. Mark Winterbottom brought it home from Mostert with Courtney 3rd. Jamie Whincup 6th, Slade 7th, Rick Kelly the first distance home in 8th, Lowndes and Tander 9th and 10th.
Yeah, James Moffat there in the Nissan 11th, Jason Bright 12th, Todd Kelly 13th, we see Lee Holdsworth, Will Davison first of the Erebus 16th, Scotty Mclaughlin got back up to 17th after dropping back to the rear, Dale Wood, David Reynolds, Michael Caruso. Yeah, so Caruso just coming home from the back of the field, only 20th. Might still be some dramas in the Nissan. Pither, Heimgartner, Ambrose, Tim Blanchard and Ash Walsh were the two that didn't get home in the first race, the V8 Supercars here at Albert Park. Well, it was an entertaining race. There's more V8s, Porsche Carrera Cup and a speed comparo to come your way, but